Good morning and welcome to the live series Straight Off the Bat. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us on Facebook, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and today we're discussing building a thriving compliance culture in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm gonna be honest, when I saw compliance, I was like, oh, well. However, we have some exciting guests today. We're going to start with Belinda James. She's an attorney at law, charter secretary, and experienced compliance professional who has operated in the financial services sector in Trinidad and Tobago for the past 25 years. I'm sure she started like when she was, I don't know, 5. She's also the president of the Association of Compliance Professionals of Trinidad and Tobago. We want to welcome Belinda. Hi, Belinda. Are you there?
Thank you. Hello. Good morning.
Awesome. We also are joined by Ferguson-Awai. She's the attorney of law of over 20 years standing and is an accredited director with over 15 years experience in banking and financial services. She's also the vice president of the Association of Compliance Professionals of Trinidad and Tobago. Let's welcome Avyann.
Hi, thank you, and thank you for having us.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. I'm going to tell you, my roomie, she's also in the financial sector, but more on a global states. And she's asking about the live show today. And I told her it was about compliance. And she was so excited. And I was like, you're such a geek. So for those out there who aren't like her and like me are like, okay, can you tell us really what is compliance? Because it's something I think when a lot of us here we're like, oh boy, I have to fill out another form. Oh my gosh, why I have to do this? A lot of questions and a lot of whys. So for those out there like me are like, what is compliance? Who wants to take it first?
Okay, well, I'll jump in. Yeah.
Go ahead,
So,
Belinda.
sure. So compliance is pretty much following the law, right? Compliance with regulations, compliance with the laws of the land. When you kind of step into the financial services sector, compliance, the primary compliance factor that we think about and that comes to mind is really anti-money laundering compliance or anti-terrorist financing compliance. And really, that's where we start in a financial institution, but there are so many other areas of compliance that we could think about, both in the banks, the financial services sector, as well as in the community at large. We have health and safety compliance. We have compliance with laws in areas like tobacco. We have, in terms of housing codes, building codes. So there are a number of areas that stretch across all of the spheres actually that deal with compliance. So basically compliance with regulations. Yeah.
Okay. And Avyann, you wanted to chime in there for that?
Of course. So Belinda is very right in terms of what we deal with in the financial services sector. But just to understand that the AML-CFT framework, which is the anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing framework, also covers what we call listed businesses under the Proceeds of Crime Act. And that would include jewelers, real estate agents, attorneys at law, motor vehicle dealers dealing with motor vehicle sales, etc. So it is a combination. There are various fronts which AML-CFT combats on, which is inclusive of financial services, but also other areas of society. So it is compliance with law. We do focus on AML-CFT compliance at this time, but it covers, both banking and non-banking sectors.
Thanks for that clarification. I just want to shout out to Lashe Mai in Digger Martin joining us today. Thank you so much for everyone who is maybe just coming on, and not to worry. We have quite a robust conversation ahead of us. So, when whoever's watching this, maybe they have a job or just more than likely have a bank account. So when it comes to being a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, can you tell us a little bit about the Association of Compliance Professionals in the country and what exactly is its mission?
Sure. So ACPTT, Association of Compliance Professionals of Trinidad and Tobago, was really birthed 15 years ago. This is our 15th year anniversary. It is a nonprofit organization registered under the Nonprofit Act as well as under the Companies Act. We do provide a lot of training, awareness, networking, community building amongst compliance officers. And as I indicated, compliance officers will deal both with in the banking and financial services space as well as the listed businesses space under the proceeds of crime legislation. So it is a robust NGO of some vintage, and we do aim to, through our roundtable sessions, through our training sessions, we have a collaborative training program that we run with UE Roy Tech, dealing with both fundamentals and advanced areas of AML CFT compliance. We also comment on law. We also engage our members so that they may also understand what we call the 5 pillars of AML CFT compliance. And we aim to also, reach out to those industries that may not have the resources to have, unique compliance programs and audit and risk management frameworks, et cetera, like the jeweler, like the real estate agent, like the attorney at law. So we think that our training programs and our outreach programs and our opportunity to network really provides that value to AML CFT officers.
Okay, so we have a lot to take note of, especially with these acronyms, a lot to learn today. So, folks are watching this from an employee perspective or a business owner perspective. And I remember I used to work at a software company, actually a global software company that also has a location in Trinidad. And I was subjected, I use that word loosely, to training, which was under compliance of certain behaviors that needed to be done while obviously representing the business. So when it comes to compliance, why is it such a critical aspect of business, operating business in Trinidad and Tobago? Belinda, you want to take this?
Oh, sure. So, I mean, we talk about a civilized society. We talk about a society that's operating. We always complain as Trinidadians about things that are not working as they should. But it really starts with us complying with the laws of the land. And so it's critical for all businesses to ensure that they are doing what they need to do according to law. In our environment, of course, we talked about the banks and the financial institutions, but it goes beyond that, right? It goes to employers paying NIS for their employees. It goes to persons ensuring that they have appropriate health and safety protocols in their organizations. And so it's the foundation. It is the foundation of civilized society, a civilized society for us as Trinidad and Tobagonians. And it starts with us. Rather than complain, as a compliance professional, I would encourage folks to do what they are supposed to be doing within their businesses. It's going to protect them. It's going to help them make money. It will help them save money. And at the end of the day, it just helps society operate as it should operate effectively.
Yeah, and I'll just add there that, one of the key cornerstones and one of the benefits, substantial benefits of compliance and really having a compliance framework and a compliance culture and mindset is that you manage risk, and you manage risk from a legal perspective. You manage risk from an HSSC perspective. If we go outside of the anti-money laundering framework, you manage risk from a tax perspective in terms of ensuring that you're tax compliant, that you're paying what you're due, and you're not subject to garnishee orders that we are currently seeing in the newspapers and so. So compliance really gives a business that opportunity to really perform optimally, right, and to perform within certain rules and regulations, and really seek to protect both the employee, customers, and other key stakeholders as well.
So I'm going to be a bit of a devil's advocate because I'm here for the people. So, you talk about taxes and being compliant with the laws of the country. But as someone who spends a ridiculous amount of time online, it's not my fault, it's my job. There's this sentiment of like, why do I have to pay taxes when, I just had to go pay for my tire that fall into a massive hole? I'm not seeing anything coming
Mm.
out of this. So there's almost like a feeling of despair. So there's this reasoning that we do because the human mind, and it's amazing. So what advice would you give to that business owner, that person who may think, what am I doing this for?
Specific to paying taxes,
Yes.
I think the reality is, I mean, not trying to step into the Minister of Finance's shoes, which, we can't fill at all. But understand it's a chicken and egg scenario. We do have specified avenues for revenue. And really taxes, whether we like it or not, is one of those aspects, one of those areas. I think everyone should pay their fair share. I think everyone should contribute to, to the taxes only to make things better, to make the delivery of goods and services better. The reality is most of our goods and services are increasingly getting more and more expensive. So it's important that everyone contributes. It's important that we don't try the tax evasive, techniques to avoid paying tax, because that really just does not benefit us in the long run. We do need the income so that we could provide better roads, better services, health care, education, outfitting of schools, refurbishment, etc. I mean, this is just part of it. It's not unique to Trinidad, certainly not unique to Trinidad. So it's just the course of these things that, one of these things that we just kind of have to do. So, and we would encourage.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Avyann. I just really wanted to say that when, it's not always productive to compare, but when we compare ourselves to countries like Canada and the UK, and you look at the tax that is paid in those societies, they pay for the services that they receive. We compare ourselves and we say that, we get better hospital care in the United Kingdom or in Canada, but there's a reason for that. It's because they pay taxes. And arguably, we don't pay enough tax in Trinidad, right? And the money that we are paying in tax, and the money that the government is losing from those who are not paying tax, is why the roads perhaps are not being maintained as they should. The hospital services are not where they should. There are obviously other reasons, right? But it has to start somewhere. And I think if we recognize the importance of following the law, inclusive of which is paying taxes as they are due, it just goes to a better infrastructural framework, because at the end of the day, the taxes that we're paying are supporting and are paying for the services that we are hoping to avail and that we are asking the government to provide to us.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, as someone who grew up on box lunches, I don't know where I would be without it. And it was an integral part of my childhood for so many reasons. But thank you so much for expanding on that, because we all fall trapped into these discussions that are happening online, and they're not necessarily the reality or showing the full story. So I want to go on a quick break, but before we do, I just want to preempt our panel with the question ahead. When it comes to the biggest compliance challenges faced by businesses in Trinidad and Tobago, because we hear this thing about anti-money laundering and data privacy, but a lot of us don't think, well, that doesn't apply to me. Why do I need to be part of this process? So stick around. We'll be answering these questions right after this break. welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're doing so from LinkedIn, don't forget to subscribe to our page to continue seeing content that'll help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and today we're discussing building a thriving compliance culture in Trinidad and Tobago. We're joined by two amazing ladies, Belinda and Avyann, and they are both coming here with a wealth of knowledge, decades and decades of knowledge. We're going to try and squeeze out as much information from them as possible. So we do have some folks in the chat. We have Tamara joining us on YouTube from Point Fortin. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we've also had a question about joining the NGO. But we have someone in the comments, Samantha, answering that. So I think this is a good opportunity to expand and have this discussion around compliance for the professionals of Trinidad and Tobago. So just before the break, I just kind of preempted, but we're going to revise again the question. What are some of the biggest compliance challenges faced by businesses in Trinidad and Tobago today? So we're going to start with Belinda. Do you have any insight for us on that?
Sure. So I think one of the compliance challenges that we have in Trinidad and Tobago specifically is really the fact that the legislation has not kept pace with the way that the world is evolving. So from a digital perspective, for example, we don't have legislation in place to support businesses in terms of the type of mechanisms they can put in place to facilitate digital transactions, to facilitate digital ways, means of doing business. That's just one example. When you look at things where the criminals have gone, so they've gone to places like cybercrime. We don't have mechanisms in place to ensure that cyber criminals are prosecuted effectively. And so what you find is many businesses are sort of floundering around trying to figure out what do we do to protect ourselves in the absence of legislation to support us, to provide guidance to us. And quite frankly, that's where the association comes in. Avyann mentioned the listed businesses in the area of AML-CFT. While the banks and the larger financial institutions, insurance companies have quite a bit of resources, both in terms of monetary resources as well as networks to tap into to get information on the compliance programs that they should put in place, the smaller businesses don't have that type of support. So that's another challenge, right? Just really the framework, the legislative framework, the resources in order to protect themselves. Businesses need to protect themselves against the various risks that are coming at them as the world evolves, as the criminals who keep 10 steps of us evolve. That really, I think, is the key challenge. How do we keep pace with the evolution to protect ourselves as businesses? And some of us as businesses just have more resources than others, so we have to figure out how to bridge the gap.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I understand that legislation, and if you look at how the AML-CFT legislation evolved, it evolved with legislation first, which would be all the Proceeds of Crime Act, anti-crime legislation, anti-terrorist legislation, you have FIU legislation, etc. But supporting that legislation is regulations, which are quite prescriptive, guidelines, which are quite prescriptive, which really is an adequate roadmap for not just the banks, but also for listed businesses, also for businesses that do not have the resources of the banks, the insurance companies, the securities companies, the money remittance, etc. So that guidance is really critical, and that support even provided by the FIU, who also does a lot of training sessions, etc., really gives businesses the information, the knowledge, and the guidance that they need so that they can protect themselves adequately. And quite apart from cybersecurity and the absence of bespoke legislation to deal with cyberbullying, social media engineering, and scams, cyber attacks, etc., you have to think about, hand in hand with that is really a far more robust data privacy legislative framework with a dedicated data privacy commissioner, as we are seeing in other islands, St. Lucia, Barbados, for example, Jamaica. We have to protect data person's personal information and data privacy. You really need to shore up that legislation. Put a little bit of energy, put a little bit of muscle behind it, so that it goes hand in hand with protecting persons from what is happening in the digital space. Right, so we are moving, whether we like it or not, we are moving to a digital world. A lot of people are already there, already operating in the space. What we now need to do is to really create the framework to protect people and to punish bad actors in the space.
It's interesting you mentioned us being in a digital world because I was having a discussion a few days ago about, I think the act of voting and how, you know, the physical aspect of it, there is some issues, but also when you're doing it digitally. So I feel like we're presented now with different problems because it's not as if people weren't trying to do illegal things before. It's just in a different space, and a lot of us are still trying to figure out, just look at my mother trying to type in a website address. You're still trying to figure out how this thing is working. So some people are more susceptible than others. So when it comes specifically to the Association of Compliance Professionals of Trinidad and Tobago, what resources and support do you offer to professionals in this space?
So at this juncture, what we have done prior and what we will continue to do this year is really training and awareness. For persons who are not operating for persons who are operating in the financial services space and otherwise. So we did host some webinars in the past around that, and I think given the growing concerns, given the fact that social media in particular is the medium of choice for some fraudsters, especially when we're dealing with investment fraud, romance scams, the Ponzi schemes that we are seeing, the job application scams that we are seeing. We really need to do a little bit more training around that and a little bit more training around how best you can protect yourself. In fact, we have an upcoming training very specific to anti-fraud that will touch on, because we have members of law enforcement to assist us with what they are seeing in the market and how best we can protect ourselves. And we did a standalone section to just deal with cybercrime, cybersecurity, cyber-enabled crime, social media engineering, and those types of scams. So where we can contribute at this time is largely with training and awareness. And that's where we are going to in this space.
Belinda, you wanted to add to that?
Just to add that advocacy, I think, is a really important part of our role as well. So, as an institution or organization of professionals who have a lot of information at our disposal, advocating for changes in legislation, advocating for enhancements that can protect us and protect our businesses. That is one of our important roles. Avyann mentioned it earlier, but that is something that I think we need to do more of with our government, with the politicians, so that they understand that there are things that need to be done, right, in terms of our legislative framework, so that we can have the type of environment that businesses can continue to prosper in.
Yeah, sounds like a direction for a lot of small businesses and businesses in general. But I think in small businesses, we tend to, obviously we want to focus on getting more money. We don't have resources to direct to compliance because we're still trying to figure out how to invoice, So do you have any advice for that person out there who wants to be in a position when they do reach of like, okay, I am profitable, they're also compliant?
So I guess I'll start by saying there's a wealth of not just there are so many providers, right? There are so many resources out there that can support in terms of ensuring that your system is secure, ensuring that your network, your work network is secure, protected against infiltration. So I would encourage small business to explore those types of avenues. Don't take it for granted. You're a small business, yes, but you don't want to be that weak link, because it is very easy for a small business to be a weak link and a target for the fraudsters, because they don't have the firewalls and they don't have all of the fancy protections that a large organization would have. So it's important to spend the money. As we started off, we talked about compliance. I think before we got on air, compliance is the biggest cost center, right? Compliance is the area that shuts off the pipe. But at the end of the day, you have to make an investment into protecting your organization, and it's important to pursue opportunities to do that with experts. And they exist, right? There are so many folks out there with the tools and the technology to help us. I think small business people have to make those decisions to spend some money on those protections so that they do not end up with the revenue flowing out the door to the fraudsters.
Avyann, you wanted to add to that?
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to do the continuous advocacy for improved legislation and for, even more rigorous monitoring, because one bad actor could really put you out of business for quite some time. One identity skimming, one business email compromise. There are so many methods and ways used by the fraudsters to really attack vulnerable businesses who don't really spend the time putting a robust framework in place to protect themselves, or even understanding what the risks are out there. So I think it's important that businesses, because we do also have medium-sized businesses who have grown from the small into medium, who are doing well, but never really invested in, compliance and creating a robust framework, doing fraud risk assessments and creating, an anti-fraud policy or anything like that. They just continue focused on the business, but understand that the fraudsters are equally focused on you, on, those businesses, and thinking about what is the easiest way to get their revenue from in their coffers into ours. So one, continuous training, continuous awareness, seek out people who can give you that information that you need. I know cyber security insurance is now something that is coming on stream as well to protect yourselves. But find ways to make sure that you know what's out there. Find ways to make sure that we protect ourselves from what is out there, and continuous advocacy so that, government puts it on the front burner that, listen, we need to protect our businesses, because the integrity of our businesses, the strength, the growth of our businesses, it's also crucial to our economy. It's also crucial to our country. So it's important that, the legislation keeps pace with e-commerce, with the cybersecurity risks that are out there.
Okay, so we're gonna go on a break, but before we do, I want to preempt the question that's coming after, and that has to do with, as a small business owner, you mentioned hiring someone, small business, even to medium size, to preempt this risk that is inevitable, especially with cybersecurity. I mean, the word cybersecurity didn't exist. It's now shot up when you looked at Google Trends. People are searching for that. So, as a business owner, where does that conversation start? Who do you hire? Because you're still like, oh, what does this even mean? Who is the actual person I have to hire? What is their title? Is this going to be like a lot of questions will be asked. I'm representing the people, also myself, because I also am a small business owner, and I'm like, what? So yeah, so that's a long question, and we're going to answer it right after the break. welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're doing so from YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our page to continue seeing content and help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and today we're discussing building a thriving compliance culture in Trinidad and Tobago. We're joined today by Belinda James. She's an attorney at law, chartered secretary, and experienced compliance professional who has operated in the financial services sector in Trinidad and Tobago for the past 25 years. We're also joined by Avyann Ferguson-Awai. She's an attorney at law for over 20 years standing and is an accredited director with over 15 years experience in banking and financial services. So we have a robust panel today when it comes to their experience, and we're marrying the compliance sector and the financial conversation that needs to happen. So just before the break, I kind of had a long-winded question, and I'm going to shorten it again. So for those who may have missed it, we want to find out as small to medium business owners, because we don't necessarily have a department for compliance. So within that space, when you're growing a business, you're focusing on sales, you're focusing on scaling to make sure that when that new business comes in, you do have the people there to ensure quality control of the service and product that you're providing. But at the end of the day, like compliance, where does that fit in? So I'm going to throw it out to our guest today. Where do we start? Who do we look for when we want to start this compliance conversation as a business owner? I see them thinking.
I think the conversation starts with really understanding. So, of course, you're in the business space. You have to understand, okay, what are the key legal risks in my space? And I know that sounds.
I probably would be very bold to say you could look to the Association of Compliance Professionals,
Yes.
and we will certainly.
I think you have a delay because Avyann was answering the question. So she can finish off and then you could add to her.
Yeah, sure. So what I was saying, but Belinda is right. We are very much available to provide some support. But I think, when you look at the nature of the business you are in, it will sort of point you to the areas that you should focus on most. So the compliance requirements or the risks associated with your business in manufacturing will certainly be different from distribution. Similarly, banking versus securities companies and that kind of thing. So it's important to understand exactly what are some of the key compliance issues that you want to address. Now, there are some general things which would be compliance with the Companies Act, compliance with tax, BIR, VAT. If you are under the Proceeds of Crime Act, you have the AML-CFT framework that you have to put in place, and we provide some significant support around that as well. If you're in a business that has HSSE issues, then there's significant compliance around that. So you have the OSHA legislation and that kind of thing. Similarly, although we have some data privacy legislation in place, it really needs to come into the similar spaces that we are seeing in the region. So what the Association of Compliance Professionals can assist with is in terms of how do you build out that compliance framework? How do you identify what is best for you? And what you need to focus on, what laws you need to comply with, what processes you have to put in place, what risks you have to best mitigate to ensure that you are not a target, that you are in compliance and would not have, whether it is the BIR, we have the Financial Intelligence Unit, the Financial Intelligence Bureau, even simply the TTPS, OSHA, etc., occupational safety and health, coming knocking at your door. If we are to build a compliance culture, then we have to understand that compliance is really the cornerstone of your business, right? So you want to grow your revenues, but you want to grow your revenues in a sustainable way to ensure that, you're not going to be subject to just a diminution of the revenues with one hit. or with one risk being elevated to you in such a way that you lose significant revenue. And so I think hand in hand in revenue growth, you have to think about what are the things that best support my revenue growth, and that is at the very first thing is, of course, compliance with law.
Yeah, that's a lot. There's a lot of acronyms there, and there's a lot to do. And as a business owner, it's like, there's a lot. But in terms of risk, it makes sense. So, Belinda, we're back with you. I know we had a bit of a delay, but you wanted to
Yeah,
expand on that?
sorry about
That's okay.
So I didn't hear what Avyann said until the tail end, but what I would say is that you could certainly start with the association, right, that we are part of, because we have a number of resources. We have consultants in Trinidad who can help you build a compliance program that's fit for your business. There are consultants who can be the compliance officer for your institution because provide that sort of hand holding, provide that support. And then we also have fraud consultants, fraud risk management experts who can help do an assessment of your business, determine what is required, what you may need as a smaller business owner to protect yourself. So we have resources. I would say if you have no idea where to start, send an email to the ACPTT and we'll find some support for you in your area to help you through this particular area, because it is scary, especially when you don't understand what you need, what you have to do. But we are here to support, and we do have a number of colleagues in the industry, within the network, who would be only too happy to help get you up to speed with what you need for your business.
That's a great compliment, Belinda, to the conversation. That's some good information. And for those who are watching this now or on the replay, you can check in the comments because we are placing supporting links to the conversation that's happening. So, we spoke about risk, and a lot of times there's the risk towards the health and safety. We talk about the OSHA, which is along the lines of health and safety, and think about the people that you're hiring as well as the people that your customers, right? So when it comes to the compliance conversation and the risk conversation, why is it important for businesses to understand that it can also cost them in terms of brand sort of equity? Because obviously you want to be known as a company that just doesn't provide products and services, which are great, but you're also providing something that people feel confident saying, okay, you care about your company, you care about your employees. Why is those things the risk of your brand and compliance? Why is there a marriage there? You want to take that, Avyann?
So I just to say, we see it abroad a lot. We see it in the international space a lot. Any company that is, subject to any kind of anti-money laundering fine, any fine under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, anything like that touches things like money laundering, bribery, corruption, tax evasion, etc., there is a reputational impact to it, because as difficult sometimes as the conversation around compliance is, as a customer, you want to ensure that wherever I am swiping my credit card, I want to know that this is not a company that is involved in bribery or corruption or tax evasion or anything like that. So we look at it from two perspectives, right? You also, as an employee, you want to work in a company that will be they're deducting the NIS from you, and they are actually remitting it to BIR, so that you don't feel the hurt when you reach age 60. So each business has to think that skirting the law, cutting corners, outright non-compliance with law is not something that will be received well by the public, and therefore will bring reputational harm and damage to your brand. So everyone wants to work with, engage in transactions with businesses that are on the up and up. And therefore, businesses have to say to themselves, listen, I'm going to pay my taxes. I'm going to create the policies and procedures that are required to ensure that I comply with all other aspects of laws that are relevant to my business. So no business wants that reputational tarnish. So that is why I think there is a natural synergy between compliance and, management of reputational risk.
Such an important factor. So just everyday operations for business, especially in a digital age where everyone has their phone and are prepared to post everything. So
Everything.
I think this is such an important conversation to have. And I just want to shout out in LinkedIn, we have Krisha. So this is a necessary conversation. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us today. So let us shift the conversation a little bit in terms of emerging compliance trends. Because, earlier we spoke about what is compliance in the context of financial side of things, as well as building your brand reputation. But when it comes to compliance trends that businesses in Trinidad and Tobago should be aware of, could you give some insight? Somewhat like we're definitely having the trending word sustainability is happening, as well as being aware of social contribution, to the world. So, Belinda, you want to start a conversation? Are you hearing us? Oh.
Regulators across the world are becoming very keen on understanding how businesses are taking care of the earth, how they are operating sustainably. They're not impacting the environment by what they do, and that's translating into laws that force businesses to have certain things in place, right? In terms of, I work with a bank, so just as an example. On the banking side, you don't want to lend money to someone who is not taking care of the environment as they do construction, or that they're doing mining, but it's being done in a particular way. It's an environmentally sensitive way, and those are considerations that the banks now have to bring to bear when they are doing lending. So there are those types of things. I mean, that's on the environmental side. On the governance side, of course, there are all of the practices around good behavior, ethics, proper governance structures. How are the boards making decisions? Are they considering things like social aspects? And there's so many things that are happening and evolving in the world that are impacting businesses. They may not be impacting the smaller businesses as yet, but it's going to come. In North America, then there are metrics around governance, there are metrics around environmental considerations and social considerations. There's some companies that mandate that you need to have a diverse board of directors. You need to have more than X number or X percentage of your directors, X percentage of your senior management, your executive are diverse, are women. So those are conversations that are happening. Those are things that those are frameworks and laws that exist in North America, and that we will eventually start to see here. And we're seeing some of it, particularly among the multinational companies and the more advanced, I guess you call it, environments sectors. But it will flow across to the entire flow. So at the end of the day, I think as a country, we have to understand how these things are impacting us and the effect, right? The effect on the laws as we go forward. But it is coming. So we need to keep an eye on those evolutions.
It's so interesting that you mentioned the diversity side of things, because that is also quite a trend with, I have friends who work in global companies, and part of their KPI is to have a bit of a gender balance. So that's a very interesting trend. You wanted to add to that, Avyann?
Yeah, so when we think about financial crime and ESG, because I mean, in essence, we are kind of talking about sustainability. One of the key areas in terms of a sustainability developmental initiative is stopping illicit financial flows. And, I would shout out to all the compliance officers who are online with us today is that, we have already started that exercise, and the AML-CFT is already out front in terms of stopping illicit financial flows from entering a legitimate financial economy, or at least perverting an initial our financial economy. And when I speak to illicit financial flows, understand that that may come from things like modern day slavery, that is the sex slaves, the child labor, etc. It will also come from people who are doing illegal logging, illegal mining. So, as compliance officers and as persons who are in the industry doing the dreaded know your customer exercise with everything except your blood type, understand that we are profiling a customer and understanding that the money that we are bringing into the system, the money that we are bringing into the legitimate financial system, is not coming from what we would call unsustainable initiatives, which would be illicit activity. If we think even about the wildlife trafficking, things like that, all those things support the activities to prevent those monies coming into our system, support sustainable developmental goals, right? Stopping things like bribery and corruption. We know that billions is lost to bribery and corruption. So a framework that really is one that is anti-bribery, anti-corruption. Those are also things that will support the sustainability goals that we are all discussing now as part of ESG initiatives.
I heard you, Avyann. That blood type, that's a meme culture at this point. Like that no longer belongs to us. That's like us. But I feel like some of us are guilty of saying that. Okay, not me.
I know. It is onerous. I agree with that.
Yeah, the KYC guys is just know your customer, and we've all been there. We have a question from Lachey, but we do have to do a quick break. But when we come back, we will answer the question. I don't know if this is something you can answer, but in a credit union space, should a compliance officer be given access to the member's account in order to undertake due diligence exercise? So we're gonna come back to you, Lachey, and see if our panel of this can answer your question. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're doing so from Facebook, don't forget to subscribe to our page to continue seeing content and help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and today we're closing off the discussion around building a thriving compliance culture in Trinidad and Tobago. We don't have much time, so we're going to get to the question that was asked by Lachey Mai on Facebook. I just want to reiterate the question again. In a credit union space, should a compliance officer be given access to the members' accounts in order to undertake due diligence exercise? Who wants to take that question? There we go. Belinda, that's you.
Yeah, so yes, a compliance officer should have access to accounts to do due diligence. I'm saying it a little hesitantly because, to be perfectly honest, the best way to do monitoring, which is what we would call the type of due diligence it requires to really understand a client, to understand the transactions that they do, I think is best done in an automated way. But any automated transaction monitoring system that is put in place by a credit union just as a bank or another financial institution will have to, be able to see clients' transactions, see clients' accounts. If your credit union or your organization is not one with automated transaction monitoring, because maybe it's smaller, because maybe the investments in automation hasn't been done as yet, yes, the compliance officer should have access to the information in the members' accounts, because at the end of the day, the compliance officer is responsible for the compliance program, is responsible for identifying suspicious activity. The only way the compliance officer will be able to even understand whether transactions are normal or abnormal is by looking at transactional activity. So I would say the answer to your question would be yes. I mean, there's so much more we could say, but the short answer would be yes. The only way you can really assess a member's transactional activity is by in some way looking at that account, whether it's through a report, whether it's through monitoring automatically or any other way. But yes, you should have access to that information to do your job properly.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for asking that question, Nasher. Michelle wants to know how to become a member of the ACPTT. So I know we did respond to that before, but just give us a quick a reminder of how someone could become a member.
Sure. So please send an email to acpttmembership@gmail.com to request the membership forms, etc. You would see our code of ethics, and you'd have to fill out some information to join. It is a subscription-based organization. There is an annual subscription fee. So all of that would be, you would be informed of it when you submit. And we also invite persons to follow us on LinkedIn, Association of Compliance Professionals of Trinidad and Tobago, and we are also on Facebook. And there we also share a lot of information. But members get, exclusive access to our knowledge corners, which share a lot of information, our newsletter, and of course membership rates when it comes to our training exercises that are paid. But we also have several free sessions as well for our members.
Okay, so we have another question from Alex on Facebook. How often should we fill out a suspicious activity report? It's kind of broad question. I don't know if...
No, it's not broad at all. As soon as you're suspicious, right? As soon as there is something that is unusual, and I always say to people, unusual does not mean unusually large, right? It just means unusual, something that does not fit with the profile of the customer. Understand that when we're dealing with terrorist financing, those sums tend to be quite small, but they may come from several people. And even we are seeing with fraudsters now who are operating in spaces that are $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 and that kind of thing, not large sums of money. So when something just does not match the profile, does not match what they say a customer says that he or she would do, and you feel it is suspicious, so it cannot be explained, or the purpose cannot be explained, or the documentation doesn't add up, or even the documentation is false or fake, because we're in a space now where counterfeit is not just counterfeit money, but counterfeit documentation is a form of currency that is being used, because now documentation gets you access to transactions, as we know, as we can see, right? So wherever you are suspicious, you file that, and the requirement is within 14 days, according to law. Yeah, Belinda?
Oh, that makes sense. So that's why I've been asked about the deposits. That makes sense. So we're kind of short for time. So we want to close off and ask this final question. How do you see the role of compliance professionals evolving in the future, specifically for Trinidad and Tobago in this financial space that we're in? You want to start, Belinda?
Sure. So I think, we talked a lot about the things that I feel that we will evolve into as compliance professionals. We talked about different types of compliance, much more than just AML, CFT, anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, conduct, how do we behave, ethics, Data privacy is a key aspect. That's going to be a really important part of a compliance officer's life. We have things like, it just sort of jumped out in my mind, but insider trading. There are a number of things, cybersecurity. So the compliance professionals toolkit, I think, is going to expand beyond AML, CFT into a number of other spheres. And as ourselves, as compliance professionals within the association, we will take on more of an advocacy role as we've described, where we advocate the government for more progressive, more enhanced legislative frameworks to protect us and to guide businesses on what they have to put in place for their businesses to ensure that they are protected and that their revenues are secure. So I think that is how the role of the compliance professional will evolve in the future.
Thank you for that. You want to join on that conversation, Avyann?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we started the conversation by saying compliance really has a very wide breadth, and for businesses to do well and to operate in a manner that complies with law, you really need that sort of overarching guide to businesses in terms of how do I comply with all that I'm required to comply with. Probably in our future, we would see a CPTT or a compliance association developing in the ways that, let's say, a law association will, or an ICAT, the accounting association does, where we would have a bigger mandate and our standalone secretariat, etc. That is our ideal rule and our ideal space, so that compliance professionals can really come through. There will be one central network for it, and therefore be able to provide even more to the market, right? And even more guidance, even more support, etc. to the market. But yes, I totally agree that the compliance professional really needs to expand its breadth as well. So we come out of not just only anti-money laundering, but we also enter into things like data privacy, into cybersecurity, and one department, several subject matter experts that deal with all of these issues to support businesses.
Well, thank you so much. And on that note, we're going to close off the discussion. We do have a question in the comment section on Facebook, but we will have the folks at the compliance professional group to answer that. This is the folks at Association of Compliance Professionals of Trinidad and Tobago. They will answer your question in the comment section. I'm assigning that to them. All right. So on that note, thank you so much, Belinda and Avyann, for joining us today and sharing insight into building and thriving compliance culture in Trinidad and Tobago. Sign up to be notified about our next live show, where we'll be discussing financial literacy via the link in the comments. And as always, be sure to like and follow our page. We are on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, so you don't miss a single live show. And thank you again for joining us. Bye.